Welcome back to the program. Now the countdown to the May 29 handover started and the state of the economy is getting revealed by the day. Now this is the final lap of President Jonathan's administration when he started in the cabinet as a vice president under the late President Musa Yar'Adua's administration. He later became the de facto president when the President Yar'Adua fell ill and died in office. Of course, since then, President Jonathan has contested an election and he won. Now he's lost his second tenure bid and he'll be out of office on the 29th of May. So let's begin the countdown, as it were. Of course, we're looking at the state of the economy. Boniface Cheze, who is an economist, is joining us live here this morning. A very good morning to you, sir. We thank you very much for finding time, as always, to join us here on the program. A very interesting time where we are right now. This is the first time in Nigeria's history that we're changing political parties at a junction, as it were. They were also changing the manner, the hem of affairs, and most likely there will be a raft of changes at the ministries, parastatals, agencies of the government. Based on what you've been reading on the pages of newspapers, watching televisions, give us your thoughts about wrapping up the administration of President Jonathan. This is the final laps.
Well, I think that the first thing that's important is that we had transition committees. We had for President Jonathan, he has a handover and so on and so forth. And then on the other hand, you had President-elect, President Buhari coming in, also had his own committee. And there are some issues, we have some problems, because what we thought was going to happen is that it's going to be like seamless, in the sense that the two committees will meet, and then those coming in are trying to set an agenda for the incoming president, and he needs to put up to speed in terms of what is happening to the economy, state of the economy. Like you did observe in the opening comments. And there are lots of comments coming out, in terms of the situation on liquidity situation, the debt situation, and so on and so forth. Salaries are not being paid. And there are also concerns. So that's very important. That is handled properly. Because I think that for the incoming administration, 4 years in the life of a nation is not long. And given the expectations, expectations are very high. I did an article which I did say that, in fact, the expectation is that Buhari is being expected to become a magician, that will turn water into wine. And I said that part of the challenges he's going to have is to try and manage these expectations. Now, given that, it means that it's important that he is brought up to speed in terms of the state of affairs. There are certain things we cannot get we outside, from the media, which maybe, in handover notes and so on and so forth, the need for clarifications and so on.
I need to put in very quickly here, this is going to be a bit of a lengthy conversation with you.
Yes,
so I'm sure you're prepared for that.
I'm prepared for it.
A few concerns have been expressed about the raft of appointments being made by the outgoing administration, but the talk had always been governance is a continuum. In other words, the fact that the outgoing administration lost an election does not mean that they shut down business until the next one comes in. So if there are pending appointments, for example, if there are files on the president's table, if there are memos that he needed to attend to in terms of who constitutes a new board and perhaps confirm certain appointments or send certain individuals' names to the National Assembly for confirmation, that those things should be done. Why do you think there's some noise on the street, as it were, as to, why is he doing this at this point? Why is he awarding contracts? Why does this ministry spend this money? And things like that.
Well, I think that whatever you do, if you're in governance, you have to prepare that you have comments, it come negative, positive. I think that one should expect that, in the sense that President Jonathan is going to go, and there are certain things that have been pending. There are certain things, certain decisions have not been taken. And then let's take it. The last time we had the last elections, it was okay, there was a transition, but there wasn't a change in the party, so it was still the same party. And now President Jonathan is going to go. And then if you psychologically, if you look at President Jonathan as a person, and look at the way he's been characterized, during his time in office, this president is clueless, Papa goes slow, he doesn't take decisions and so on and so forth. And then he doesn't act. I think there was a need for him to now, to some extent, begin to show the other side of him. To some extent, yes, there were certain things that weren't done as quickly as they should have been done. For instance, it's on record that at some point in time, the boards were dissolved in this country, and then the boards were not. The appointments were not made, to reconstitute these boards for almost 2 years.
If I may cut in there, so did you think that perhaps in the last 1 year, perhaps the president and the rest of his team, as it were busy preparing
for elections?
For 2015 elections, that there were a lot of files in the inbox, whereas the outbox...
Yes, well, I think that it's a combination of the two, in the sense that, I would expect that certain appointments are being made. For instance, if you look at specific issues, like universities, being licenses being given and so on and so forth, maybe those ones were pending. And maybe there could be some expectation that says that we expect that we'll still be there, after the elections. I mean, you go into elections expecting that you win. And so, so scientists will say, we'll do this after the elections.
Suddenly you found out that you've lost.
Yes, and then so you have to take those decisions.
So you get back to work.
Yeah, but what is very important is that in taking those decisions, because then if you've not done due process in taking those decisions, there could be some missteps. And that's why we have to be very careful. Because it's not very good for the incoming president to come and begin to reverse things. I would prefer that he comes and then begins to look ahead as much as possible. But for instance, in doing that, now you begin to infringe certain things. For instance, if there are guidelines that say you shouldn't do certain things, and then you do them and you make some appointments, and that conflict of interest begins to show as it's being rumored and so on and so forth, then the incoming administration will be forced to look back. And so yes, okay, there are certain things you have to do, and then you are doing them. It will seem as if you're doing them in a hurry. And if you're doing them in a hurry, now the points are then when you now sacrifice, when you do something you want to buy time, you might sacrifice due diligence. And so if you're not careful, then you might make some wrong appointments. I think that's, or take wrong decisions. Let's not just constrain it to just appointments.
But based on what is coming out almost on a daily basis in the media, one of the newspapers today had a front page story that says, President Jonathan says, well, he has pity for himself and his aides, that he knows there will be persecution, quote and unquote, as soon as May 29 was over. Do you share the outgoing president's sentiment in that regard?
Well, I would expect that once you are in public governance and so on and so forth, you should expect that. You expect that you are taking decisions and you're going to step on some toes. Alison Madeke, an NPC, she was quite vociferous in saying that she stepped on some fat toes. And so you expect that you're taking certain decisions and that you're going to step on some toes. But then life continues. You roll with it, as it comes. So he himself did say that, for instance, that he knows his number of friends would diminish. He's saying the obvious. Something that stating the fact. So if you're in governance and you've taken certain decisions, you want to have taken decisions that will affect some people negatively and so on, and then you expect that if they're in a position, they want to get back at you.
Looking back at the last 5-6 years of President Jonathan's administration, now at the final lap, as he's packing his things and getting ready to leave office, where do you think his chief concern will be as to whether we like it or not, the Buhari's administration will do some look back, as it were? Where do you think the President Jonathan's chief concern will be at the moment?
Well, if you ask me, I think that certain things that have been put in place that are beginning to gather speed and gather momentum. If he has the interest of this country at heart, he's going to be more concerned about those ones. For instance, he's talking about the power sector. I listened to the Minister of Power, Professor Nebo. He did say that one of the things that this incoming government must not do is to reverse the privatizations, the decisions that have been taken in the power sector. And that what we have some challenges. What you need is, for instance, that certain things we put in place and now get to the state where we are. If you go back to when President Yar'Adua took over from President Obasanjo, at that point in time, remember that most refineries were sold. He came and revised them. And then those refineries are still where they are. We've not been able to do much with those refineries today. And so you have to be very careful. And besides the fact that when you talk of instability, when you talk of attractiveness of an environment, it's the fact that governance is a continuum. And so if for instance, somebody's been in government and is taking certain decisions, and those decisions have been taken legitimately, we expect that those decisions will stay. Now, if, for instance, it has to be that once there's a change in governance, there's a change, people change their face and so on, then things that have been done before be upturned. Then once you begin to have that, then people are going to be very careful in dealing with you.
Is that a major concern for you as an economist right now, for local investors, not just foreign investors, because Nigerians also put their money where their mouth is and their mouth where their money is. So where the first charity begins at home. But for foreign investors as well who are also looking into Nigeria, do you think there are some concerns regarding the way this news media report about whether the private sector should be done, whether universities should be looked into, the oil sector and what have you? Yes, Nigerians, everybody in and out would want some anti-corruption stance. They want that to be revved up. They want more accountability, transparency. But do you think there are some concerns there that perhaps that exercise could upset?
I think that there should be some concerns in the sense that you want to make sure that this peace we have, this stability we have, that it's continued. And we're waiting. We don't know what will happen when the APC begins to appoint their key people in the House and so on and so forth. APC, for instance, that many parties came together. By the time you begin to allocate, begin to share these things, there could be some problems. And then some of us, for instance, would want the incoming president, government to come and, for instance, take away the subsidy. I, as an economist, I don't see any benefit in the subsidy because I think that it's not getting down to, it's not doing what it's supposed to do. All it has done is create a problem for this country. All right? And so is it going to come to do that? And how is he going to handle it? What would be the template? What is going to be the strategy if it's going to do that? I think that's so that people will want to see some, yes, you have to be changed. And that change has to be within the context of some stability.
That's the question, yes. Yes, change. Nigerians will want change.
Yes.
But you're putting it into context for us right now.
Yes.
So in terms of how the two transition teams for the outgoing and the incoming folks are relating, do you think they've been harmonious enough, looking at the sound bites that we're getting on a daily basis?
Well, I think that one should expect that the outgoing administration will be interested in making sure that they put things in clear perspective to the incoming administration.
Clear perspectives
yes.
or show the true state of affairs.
Yes, that's exactly what I mean. That means this is where we are now. This is where if we are going. This is what we are going, and so on and so forth. These are the problems. There are challenges we see in these sectors, and so on and so forth. Because you expect that incoming administration, with its transition committee, we want to build on this because you see the point about the incoming the transition committee for the incoming administration is that they want to set up an agenda to say, look, you're going to come. These are the things you want to do, say in the first 100 days. And so there are certain things that are there. For instance, if you want to correct the power situation, for instance, not something you can do overnight. I keep on going to power because I think that what GSM has done to us, those of us who have been around for a while, and we went from NITEL and so on, chasing for lines and so on, and we got GSM. And now people, living in our house, they have two handsets. What it has done to us, if we can sort out, correct the power situation, it would double that in terms of productivity. It's very important. And so there are challenges. You have security challenges. You have various sectors, even the appointments that the incoming administration is going to make. People are just going to be waiting to see, what's going to form the appointment, what caliber people are going to put there. Are you going to de-emphasize political capital and look for people who have expertise and so on and so forth? And because really, one of the challenges we have in governance is that you put people in areas. I just come in and I was reading the papers, and I was saying that in the airline industry, that they want somebody who has some expertise in that area. And same you can say for so many other areas. You bring somebody who is a professional, he comes to the place, and he's not going to begin to learn the ropes and begin to be misled by people who have hidden agendas.
Well, I'm sure we're going to have time to talk about this because we've seen some examples. We've seen a professional in the power sector, a former power sector minister or power minister. We've seen a few issues like that. But again, we have a few questions for you regarding those ministries, those departments and agencies, MDAs, who should be scared from May 29, and what should they be doing? There are a few issues that have been reported. We'll talk about that after the break. Boniface Cheze, an economist, and is joining us live in the program to discuss the very important issue, the state of the economy, the final lap of President Jonathan's administration. We're counting down to the 29th of May. We'll be back.